Breaking news now. Police have identified the man who they say shot and killed 8 children in Shreveport, Louisiana today. His name is Shamar Elkins. Authorities are calling this a result of domestic violence. The shooting happened at 6 this morning. The victims range in age from 1 to 14 years old. Shreveport police say a total of 10 people were shot, the only survivor.
On April 19, 2026, the state of Louisiana witnessed one of the most heartbreaking family massacres in recent American history. A case many are now calling a house of horror, a domestic nightmare that turned into a national tragedy. What began as a violent domestic disturbance inside a quiet Shreveport neighborhood quickly became a crime scene so disturbing that even experienced detectives were left shaken. 8 children were dead. 7 of them were believed to be his own children. The suspect was their father, 31-year-old Shamar Elkins, a former National Guard member, a man neighbors once described as quiet, a father. And in just one night, everything turned into unimaginable horror. The community was terrified. News spread across Louisiana like wildfire, and within hours, the case had become national headline news. But as investigators searched for answers, another mystery began pulling attention online. Who was the child that survived? Some early reports claimed the survivor was a boy. Others insisted it was a girl. Social media exploded with conflicting stories. People wanted to know, who escaped that house? Who lived to tell the story? And what exactly happened inside that home before the gunfire stopped? Because sometimes the most terrifying part of a crime scene is the person who survives it. Welcome to the Forgotten Files. In today's case, we uncover the latest updates in the horrifying Shamar Elkins case, one of the deadliest family massacres Louisiana has seen in years. We'll walk through what happened inside that house, how one child survived, the police chase that followed, and the disturbing questions investigators are still trying to answer. Stay with me, because the question of where that gun came from is the detail investigators are still unraveling. And it may change everything about how we understand what happened that night. And if you enjoy deep true crime documentaries like this, make sure you subscribe to The Forgotten Files, hit the like button, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's open the file. Shreveport, Louisiana, a city known for its quiet neighborhoods, family communities, and southern calm. But on the night of April 19th, that peace was shattered forever. Police were called to a home after reports of gunfire and chaos. At first, it sounded like another domestic violence call. Tragic, but familiar. Officers had no idea they were about to walk into one of the most disturbing scenes of their careers. Inside the house, the horror was immediate. Children everywhere. Victims ranging from just 3 years old to 11 years old. Lives that had barely begun ended inside their own home. Authorities later confirmed that 8 children had been killed. 2 women were also found shot and critically injured. But amid the blood, the panic, and the unimaginable silence, there was movement. A child had survived. And that child's survival would become one of the most haunting parts of this entire story. Early confusion created chaos in the media. Some reports said it was a boy. Others said it was a girl. But investigators later confirmed that the surviving child was a 12-year-old girl. She escaped by climbing onto the roof during the attack. Imagine that moment. Gunshots inside your own home. Screaming. Panic. The person causing it, your own father, and your only chance to live was to climb onto the roof and jump. She survived. Injured, traumatized, but alive. Her mother, identified as Keosha Pugh, also jumped from the roof trying to escape and survived with broken bones. Another child reportedly made it to the roof as well, but did not survive. That detail alone is enough to make this case unforgettable. A rooftop escape, a mother jumping for survival, a child trying to outrun death inside their own home, and at the center of it all, Shamar Elkins. Who was he? How does a father become the center of a massacre like this? Friends and neighbors described him as quiet, not overly social. Not someone who drew much attention, but behind closed doors, investigators believed there were warning signs. Elkins had a criminal history. Court records showed a 2019 felony conviction for illegal use of a weapon. There was also a previous DWI conviction. Years earlier, prosecutors said he had been involved in a confrontation involving gunfire. Questions about violence were not new, and yet somehow the system moved on. He was also a former member of the Louisiana Army National Guard. Some reports later mentioned possible mental health struggles, including discussions around PTSD. Authorities were careful not to use that as an excuse, but it added another layer to the investigation. Was this planned? Was it a mental break? Was it rage? Was it revenge? Police have pointed strongly toward domestic violence as the center of the motive. And if that is true, then this was not random. This was personal, very personal. This wasn't a man who simply snapped overnight. The records showed a pattern, and that pattern had a shape experts recognize immediately. A prior felony conviction involving a weapon, a history of violent confrontation, domestic instability, questions about emotional control, and investigators believe those warning signs may have been building long before April 19. People often ask how family annihilators are created. How does someone cross that line? Experts say these cases are often built slowly. Control, isolation, anger, financial stress, relationship breakdowns, emotional instability, and then one final trigger, a moment where violence becomes the answer. For investigators, understanding that trigger became critical, because after the shooting, Shamar Elkins did not stay. He ran, and what happened next turned this tragedy into a citywide manhunt. After leaving the home, police say Elkins carjacked another vehicle and fled the scene. Now officers weren't just investigating a massacre, they were hunting an armed suspect who had already killed children. The fear across Shreveport was immediate. People locked doors. Parents held their children tighter. Police moved fast. The chase stretched into nearby Bossier City, lights flashing, units closing in, every officer knowing exactly who they were pursuing. This wasn't just a suspect. This was a father accused of murdering his own children. And officers knew someone like that had nothing left to lose. The pursuit ended in a final confrontation with police. And there, Shamar Elkins died. In the early hours, reports were unclear. Some asked whether police shot him. Others believed it may have been self-inflicted. Investigators worked to piece together those final moments. But for many people, one question mattered more than how he died. Why? Why those children? Why that night? Why his own family? And while the nation searched for motive, another disturbing piece of the puzzle emerged: the weapon. Where did the gun come from? Federal investigators later turned their attention to another man, Charles Ford. Authorities allege that Ford illegally possessed the firearm used in the massacre and failed to properly report it missing. According to investigators, Ford told them he believed Elkins had taken the rifle from his truck weeks earlier. As of the time this video was recorded, investigators had not publicly confirmed every detail of how Elkins obtained that weapon. And that unanswered question matters, because if the firearm had been reported sooner, if intervention had happened earlier, this entire story may have looked very different. We will continue following this case, and if new answers emerge, we'll be back. That revelation created another wave of outrage. If the gun had been reported earlier, could this have been prevented? Could 8 children still be alive? Sometimes in cases like this, tragedy doesn't come from one decision. It comes from several. One ignored warning, one delayed report, one failed intervention, one final violent act. And by the time people look back, it's too late. This case also triggered national conversations about domestic violence and hidden abuse, because often the most dangerous homes are the ones that look normal from the outside. No screaming in public, no obvious warning signs, just silence until the silence breaks. And when it does, it is often too late. For the surviving child, life will never return to normal. No headline can fully explain what she lived through. No police report can capture the sound of that night. No courtroom can erase it. She survived physically. But survival in true crime stories is rarely simple. It means carrying memory. It means remembering the roof, the gunshots, the fear, the faces, the final moments, and knowing you were the one who made it out. That kind of survival lasts forever. Across Louisiana, memorials began appearing. Candles, flowers, stuffed animals, names written by strangers who simply could not understand how something this cruel could happen. People cried for children they had never met, because some tragedies feel personal to everyone, especially when the victims are children, especially when the danger came from inside the home. And perhaps that is why this case struck the nation so deeply, because parents are supposed to protect, homes are supposed to be safe, fathers are supposed to be trusted. This case destroyed all three. Even now, debates continue online. People still ask about the survivor. People still question the motive. People still wonder if warning signs were missed, and some questions may never be answered. But one truth remains impossible to ignore. A 12-year-old girl climbed onto a roof to escape her father, and that image alone tells the entire story, not just of violence, but of survival, of instinct, of terror, and of a child who chose life in the middle of unimaginable darkness. The Shamar Elkins case is not just a crime story, it is a reminder that evil does not always arrive as a stranger. Sometimes it lives in the same house, sleeps under the same roof, sits at the same dinner table. And when it reveals itself, the damage is permanent. This case will be remembered not only for the lives lost, but for the one life that made it out. The survivor, the witness, the child on the roof. And maybe years from now, when the headlines are forgotten, that will be the part people remember most. Not the killer. Not the chase, not the gun, but the child who refused to die. This is the forgotten files, and some files never truly close. But before we close this one, remember this. This story is not just about a killer. It is about the children whose lives were stolen, the mother who jumped from that roof trying to save them, and the young girl who survived long enough to tell the world that horror can exist inside the very place we call home. If this story moved you, if it reminded you why these cases matter, why the victims behind them deserve to be remembered as human beings and not just headlines, then subscribe to the Forgotten Files and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. Because true crime is not just about what happened, it is about making sure the people lost are never forgotten. Share this video so their names continue to be heard. Every share helps keep their memory alive and keeps these conversations from fading into silence. And in the comments below, tell me this. Should Shamar Elkins have had access to that firearm given his prior convictions? Because that question matters far beyond this one case. It speaks to warning signs, prevention, and whether this tragedy could have been stopped before it ever began. I read them all, and this community built around truth, remembrance, and justice is part of why these stories continue to matter. Because sometimes the only thing more powerful than tragedy is refusing to let it be forgotten. On April 19, 2026, a 12-year-old girl climbed out of a window and onto a roof to survive. She should never have had to do that. She should never have had to choose between staying inside or jumping for her life. Remember her. Remember the children. Remember all of them. Because the only thing that outlasts a tragedy this dark is the decision not to look away. This is the Forgotten Files.